Why would someone hike for miles up a mountain to experience the thrill of catching a tiny fish? Well, today's guest, Adam Kroneberger, shares with us his reasoning and what he believes is the secret sauce of fly fishing. We also discuss the sanctity of the local fly shop and how retail trends are affecting the way that we learn, communicate, and revere those who have gone before. This interview is not all seriousness. Wait until you hear how Adam arrived at the bottom of Black Canyon and what was waiting for him at the bottom. Welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. All right. Well, thanks, Adam. Thanks for joining us today on the Remote No Pressure podcast. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having me.
Great. Now, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now in the fly fishing industry?
Yeah, so I would be the social media director or something along those lines for 3 different companies out here in Colorado, Scott Fly Rods, Ross Reels, and Whiting Farms. So managing all social media endeavors on their platforms. In addition to that, I manage the Whiting Farms Pro Team, so that would be the exception to the social media role.
Wow. So how long have you been in the fly fishing industry?
I've been in the fly fishing industry collecting a paycheck, I guess you could say, for about 3 years now.
Okay. But you've been in fly fishing your whole life, or how did that get started?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of a first generation fly fisherman in my family, and I started back around the 6th grade from Fort Collins, Colorado, so a native to this great state, and was fortunate enough to have a friend growing up that got me into it, and so we kind of fed off of each other and grew in the whole sport together.
Do you find, you had mentioned there briefly that you're first generation in your family to fly fish. Do you find in your experience most of the time with fly fishing it's multi-generational?
I think it is. A lot of the guys that I meet now, it seems like their story is, their dad got into it and they were just a tag along, and, it was a sport that was kind of for old men, so they never really took to it until recently as things have really evolved and the culture has changed. It's been more open to just some of the younger demographics. So I think a lot of the guys that are millennials and things would have a story similar to that, where they were exposed to it at a young age and kind of left it for a while and came back to it. Where for me, I was kind of doing it at a young age and trying to learn from the old guys. I just didn't care. I was just that hungry for it.
When you say learning from the old guys, who are some of the people that you learned from?
So I grew up in a fly shop in Fort Collins called Rocky Mountain Fly Shop, and then that was bought out and it was called Angler's Roost. Bought out again currently and owned by a company called St. Peter's. So that would be the guys up there in Fort Collins. My mentor in the sport is a gentleman by the name of Rick Takahashi. He's written a few books out there. He was also my art teacher in high school, so I didn't get a lot of schoolwork done, so I was always trying to talk about fishing to him. But he was a great mentor, and he's retired from teaching now and still into fly fishing. But great guy, and sort of a celebrity out here in Colorado in some ways.
Well, that's great, Adam. Let's talk a moment about the fly shop. How much time would you say on average when you were growing up? How much time on average would you spend there in the fly shop just chewing the fat and talking flies?
I think it was more of a thing to do growing up than maybe it is even now. Or maybe that could be, with where I live now, not being in Fort Collins. I'm down in Colorado Springs now. But, it was not unusual for us to be at the fly shop once or twice a week, kind of during peak fishing season, and really just trying to sit there for an hour up to 2 hours. We'd clean the shop. We would try occasionally to tie, flies for them if our stuff was good enough,
Right.
Just to say that we sort of, sold some flies commercially, but I can remember the first run we ever did was on some damsel flies, and they were so bad. The owner said, you guys, let me sit down and show you guys how to do this one time. And so he did, and, we had another crack at it, and I think he was reluctant, but at least, we got a few flies to sell through there. But yeah, we hung around there as much as we could, once or twice a week. And for us, it was just always interesting because of all the knowledge that they had. But they were also, kind of talking a different language than our parents did. It was a little bit rougher around the edges, and we kind of liked that.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this question. You're somewhat involved in retail with social media, with some great companies like you had mentioned before. And as we've seen the retail shift, consumers are buying differently. They're buying on Amazon. They're doing the Amazon Prime. They're purchasing things differently.
Yeah.
Do you see the beauty of that older generation passing it to the younger generation? How is that going to be affected with the local fly shop?
I think, in some cases it's severely affecting the local fly shops, but in other scenarios, there's fly shops that have said, we want to grow with the times, and we're going to make sure that we let people buy online. So I think there's two sides of the story. There's certainly a convenience element that's growing in the behaviors of consumers, and that is not going to go away. So I don't think you're going to see, people buying online go away. Just making purchases easier. When you're talking about specific products, it's nice to be able to search a number of different resources to get what you want. And we see that a lot with like Whiting Farms, for example. If someone wants a specific grade of hackle and a specific color or variant, they might not have that at their local fly shop. And I think you're seeing more fly shops actually slow down on some of the fly tying materials that they carry, where back in the day it was more of a we got to carry anything and everything. Now I think you're seeing fly tying sections trimmed up a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've got a giant outdoor retailer close by, and my local fly shop is a good, probably half hour minimum, depending on traffic, away from me. So it's easier for me to purchase online because I don't really get help at the big retailer close by. But let's talk about, I understand, buying it's more convenient online and all that. And we see the retail trend change, but let's take philosophically. What was it like being a young kid, learning all this stuff, gleaning from you, like you had mentioned, it was invaluable to learn from the old guys, but now do you think some of the young guys coming up are going to be missing out on the beauty of hanging out in the fly shop for an hour?
Yeah, I think they definitely are. I think, that's a lot of the kids are going to miss out because it's not as available as it once was, which is part one of the equation. But the other thing is I don't think a lot of kids want it the same way that maybe was the case when I grew up. There wasn't YouTube, and the internet took forever to load anything, to find anything you wanted. So the information that people want is a lot more readily available. So I do think kids are going to miss out. However, I'm seeing the fly shops that do it really well make great strides in closing this loop. And how they're doing it is they're building a sense of community. And you can't have community just through an online purchase. It just doesn't exist.
I totally agree. That's awesome.
Yeah. So when you're building the community right and bringing back, the fly tying nights, the things like this, I think that's where you do start to bring back some of that, just atmosphere of, different age groups, different sets of knowledge. When I was going into the fly shop, we were talking to the owner, we were talking to, the guy that just came in off the water, and there was like a shop guy too, so we had a mix of different people that we were trying to pick from and get information out of. Kids today, they're just looking up what they want on YouTube or on Facebook or through an online store. And once they've got it, they think they've got it. But there's always going to be a personal touch to this sport And I think the richness of information comes from people that are on the water day in and day out. And I think you have to find those. You have to know where they're at to tap into them. It's not just out there in an article all the time.
Right, right. Now, you had mentioned when you were in sixth grade, that's when you really started fly fishing, and you and a buddy of yours. Is that guy still your friend to this day, or?
We are still friends. We have lost a lot of contact, but we chat maybe once a year. It's kind of distant. He's up in Alaska. He's a professional kind of commercial fly fisherman for gill netting and things like that. So he kind of went the Alaska route, and we sort of lost touch that way.
Now, would you say that you both will always have a bond through fly fishing?
What was that again?
Would you say you both kind of have a bond with each other through fly fishing together all those years?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we purposefully would tie, at each other's houses. We did the whole like walkie-talkie thing, like we were just around the block from each other, and it was like, dude, check out this print sniff, or I just wasn't check it out because you couldn't see it, but I'm tying a print sniff or whatever. What are you tying? And so we did that whole thing, and we got into it together. And so, I mean, it wasn't a keeping up with the Jones sort of, thing, but it was just like when you have someone to do a sport or a hobby or anything with, it makes it that much more enjoyable. I mean, I still enjoy hitting some water by myself, but I prefer personally to do it with somebody all the time. And that was what it was for us then. We were by each other's side for fly tying and going out and hitting the water. We were not super, super close to some fly fishing, but we would ride our bikes about 6 or 7 miles one way. Now I sound like an old guy. It was, this many miles uphill both ways sort of deal. But no, we'd ride our bikes about 6 or 7 miles to get to the Poudre Canyon, and get half day of fishing or more in, and then ride back.
Wow.
So fly rods like on the handlebars, like that kind of deal.
Now, I'm imagining a sixth grader, you probably didn't have a lot of dough to drop on fly gear. What was your first setup? Do you remember that?
Yeah, all of our stuff was, we'd wait till Christmas and just pray our parents would get us a rod. And thinking back to it, we weren't even too much into like the specific names or the hottest fly rods, probably because we knew we'd never get that or something like that. But my first rod was a Sage BPS. That was a great rod, even in its time. Still have it, would never get rid of it. Sage was kind of a big name in the fly shop to start. And then Scott eventually kind of came in, and that was when we kind of started upping the game a little bit. It was like, ooh, that's our next rod. That's the rod that, if we could save up for, that's what we want to get, sort of thing. So we were not really into specific brand names. I mean, it was just like, man, if you get a rod for Christmas, that was it. Like, I don't need anything else.
Right. Yeah. I totally get it. That's great. You said you still have the Sage rod, huh?
Still do.
Yeah. Do you still enjoy fishing? Do you ever fish with it at all, or is it more kind of like a keepsake?
I fish it every once in a while. I don't know why, but I put a lot of beginners that are trying to learn on that rod, which is maybe a little bit of a mistake because that rod has been broke like 3 times by now, and it's never been by me. So it might need to retire soon, just because I don't know how long those blanks be made. Maybe Sage will continue to make them. I don't know, but it's getting to that point where it's got some years under its belt.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as far as being on the water and fishing, I mean, how many days a year would you say you're on the water, Adam?
I would say I'm like probably around 25 days, somewhere around there. So okay. It's not like a guide standard amount. Not even close, but I'm definitely a weekend warrior type fisherman. And my sick days are not necessarily sick days, let's say that. So, I a lot of times I like to I like to build vacation days around weekends. And I like to think outside the box and try to do what other people are not doing, when I kind of follow trends and where to fish, it's, I think I get a little lazy when it comes to winter fishing. I'll do the local tailwaters, and I'll do a little combat fishing for that, just because that's where you do it, if you want some open water. But like today, I hiked back about 5 miles to a creek that just opened for the first time since Labor Day of last year, and got into some brookies for the first time. And so there was nobody around. It was a great afternoon just getting out. And so that's what I did. Just kind of got some work done super early and took the rest of the day off and headed out.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Some little brookies. It's amazing how some people will, post these pictures of these huge fish, and here you are, hiking 5 miles for some brookies. And
yeah, it's like, you kind of lose the rush, I guess, for all the big fish when that there a lot of them, at least in this area, are stacked up into the tailwaters and things like that. So went out there with a fiberglass 3-weight, and my rod was bent. It was fun.
Yeah. So what drives you to chase the small? I mean, because fly fishing is a lot different than, say, like chucking a worm, with like a big, bass rod or something, where you just try to get the biggest fish possible. I mean, there's a finesse, these brookies or these smaller trout. I mean, what do you think it is that drives so many fly guys to? They don't, obviously the beautiful fish, but what do you think it is that drives people to fish for these tiny fish that you'll hike 5 miles there and back? I mean, for a tiny fish, why do you think that is?
I think it's a sense of adventure. I think people work a little too hard and take life a little too seriously. And when they go fly fishing, it's just impossible to kind of do that in some ways. I'm sure there's a few guys that take it overboard, no doubt about it. But when you get out there, it's just whatever happens. And, if you end up getting home a little bit late, well, maybe that means you had, even more fun because of whatever, So I think there's a sense of unknown, a little bit of adventure that people are looking for, and they're wanting to sign up for that. It's obviously relaxing. We've all heard that trout live in pretty places. And I don't just fish for trout, but I mean, that's mostly what's around here. Mm-hmm. But fishing in general, though, gets you outside. It gets you into some places that are just really, really beautiful. Outside the office, anything is quite pretty, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think as a society, especially guys who are outdoorsmen or girls who are outdoorsmen, do you think that society as a whole has kind of lost their sense of adventure as a whole?
Yeah, I think they have. And, talking back a little bit about, going out doing activities with good friends or family members, I think we're actually losing some of that too. I always try to set up, and I'm working on it every single year, but I've told 2 of my closest friends, one is my brother and one is my best friend, that every year we do a fly fishing trip, no matter what, from hell or high water sort of deal. Like, we're doing a trip. Like, we'll try to do some expensive ones. We'll try to do some cheap ones, but we're doing it.
Right.
And, for a while it was like, well, you just love fishing, so that's why you want to do it. They like fly fishing too, but I'm obviously a little over the top with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, no, guys, it's not just about fly fishing. Like, I can catch fish by myself. Like, right. I'm closest to it. I have the most fly rods. I'm into it, the whole deal. But I'm like, what I want to do is I want to do it with you guys, because you make it that much more fun and enjoyable for me. Mm-hmm. And there's an adventure that I can't create by myself without you guys. Mm-hmm. And so I want to what I want to do is I want to make some memories together. And I said, what's funny, and we talked about this now, we're going on probably about year 4 or something like that. It's probably been more, but we've officially kind of set it up for it. We're about year 4 now into this whole agreement. And what's funny is we talk, every other day or something. We talk quite a bit, actually. But the thing that is interesting is we keep bringing up more than just about anything, the great times we've had fishing and the stories that we got out of those. And we're just talking about one trip a year here. So there's something going on there when that's what you enjoy talking about. That's what you're commemorating on. And I was like, I don't know what the date is, 13th or something like that. I don't know. But we're not going to know what we did tomorrow really at work. We're not going to remember that. We're not going to remember the work week. We may forget the month. We may forget the quarter, all those types of things.
Right.
But when you get that nice trip put together with the people you enjoy doing it with the most, you'll remember it the rest of your life.
Right.
And you're not like focused on trying to remember it. It just happens. It's kind of like there's some kind of magic sauce there. And so I think that's why people do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. In all honesty, something when you're out there. I mean, you do make some great memories. What is the memory from fishing that you have that you'll always have? What's one of your most memorable moments fly fishing?
And I'll talk about my two buddies again. So we decided to get together and do a trip around Gunnison, Colorado. So we were going to go fishing around Gunnison. None of us had ever done it. Hardly spent any time there. It was just, we're kind of like front range guys, but we were like, let's get over there and see what's going on. So we all show up and we go into a fly shop and we're like, so where do we go fish? What do we do? He's like, oh, you can go here, here, and here. And then I asked kind of like the stupid question, but it's like what I'm always kind of a little bit hungry for at times. I said, okay, now out of curiosity, if we wanted to get some big fish, or where is the best fishing, like the craziest extreme, where would you send us for that trip? Just out of curiosity. And he goes, well, if you go hike into the Black Canyon, it's a little bit of a trek, but if you hike down in there, I don't know what kind of gear you guys got, but hike down in there, quite a trek, pretty hot, but down there, you're going to find fish in the Black Canyon that are just like dream fish. Wow. And that sold me. I was like, that's it, guys, let's go see what we got. Let's do it. And we were planning on like car camping, right? So we had like duffel bags and we had some backpacks. And I was like, we're not going to do like a week-long trip or anything into the Black Canyon because we obviously don't have the stuff for that. But like, let's go do a night or two down there.
Right.
And so I talked him into it somehow. And we didn't have any equipment, in all honesty, looking at it in hindsight. But we all bought a gallon of water, and we I think one of the guys was carrying a pillow in there. None of us had a real backpack. I mean, it was like it was a little bit crazy. So we started going down, and then we just let it all kind of loose, and we're like, you know what? Let's just strip and get naked. This is so freeing. Let's just do it. And let's just hike down this thing. And so we're like, we did it. And we started going down and we're like, all right, it's having like a wild time. Like, where else do you do this? And then it was like, all right, this isn't funny anymore because we're like out of water here, like a gallon of water in. I mean, it was like a 9-mile trek down the canyon. And so sure enough, we blew through all of our water. We didn't have filters. We didn't have iodine. We didn't have anything. But luckily, some rafters came down, and they were staying the night. They filled us up. And so we were good to go there. We get into our tent. I think it was my brother. He was like, oh, guys, I got a surprise for you. And so we're like, what is it? Like, we're deadbeat tired. I think we hardly even fished that night. We were so tired and worn out. But he pulls out of his pillow sack 3 beers, and we're like, where did you hike those? You got those in there for us? Like, of all the things we need, that's what you bring in here. So it's just like, it kind of sealed it for us, and we got into some fishing the next day, and it was fun and hiked out, but it was like, it just wasn't planned, and we just went for it, and we did things that we wouldn't normally do, and we acted a little ridiculous, but that was a memorable trip.
Now, yeah, that's a great trip. What kind of beer was it?
Gosh, I don't know. Back then, I'm scared to know what it was.
Yeah, beer has evolved quite a bit over the last 20 years.
A good chance it was a PBR.
Oh, wow. Hey, at that moment, you're probably so happy. It didn't matter what it was.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story. Now, fishing, just going for it. It seems like today, and we talked a little bit about social media and information overload. Do you think some people won't experience times like that because they're so busy looking at like, you know, the flow of the river, the weather, they only go when it's perfect? Or, you know, do you see people like that, or do you think that's not really a huge trend?
And I think there's a lot of people like that. And really, I mean, the way to become a better fisherman, the way that I'm going to get better over time is just going more. I mean, the more days that you're out there consecutively, I mean, you become the report.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're not out there, I mean, the first people that I call is I call the guides and I say, hey, what you see out there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, using the resources out there when you can't be out there every day.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I think you got to do what you got to do, but I think you have to enjoy it too. I mean, there's some days where I'm like, I know that I should tie probably, like, my box is just totally trash. It's totally empty. I can't remember how many flies I've given away. I couldn't tell you what is hatching right now. I should be so much more informed. I've been doing this since sixth grade. Oh my gosh. And I can't believe I managed this. I managed that. And I don't even know what the hatch is. And it's just like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to see what happens. And, you know, I think there's a lot of truth to. I had a guy who told me, you know, if you really just put a halfway decent bug out there with a good drip, you have a really good shot at catching fish.
Huh.
And I think he's right.
Yeah.
I think we overcomplicate it. Same guy was telling me about how he had kind of like this aha moment where he felt like he had every single fly tying material known to man. It was like his own fly shop. And he had all these flies and everything was stacked and everything was beautiful, but he was like, I don't fish this, I don't fish that, never caught anything on that. He's like,
right.
What do I have all this crap for? He's like, I'm going back to the colors that I think are basic for trout and the patterns that I know that work. I'm throwing everything else away. And he did, and the guy catches way more fish than I do. I mean, we have fished the exact same fly on opposite sides of the river, and he has caught 20 fish to my 2.
Wow.
And so it's like, you know, I think there's something to keeping things simple.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great story. We do overcomplicate it, and there's so much, like I said, information overload. It's like this, that, you know, but really you just need to get your butt on the water and do some casting and try to figure things out.
You totally do. And, you know, one thing that and I'll throw this in there, I felt like I was supposed to be this way, but I definitely came into it regardless. But I was a snooty trout fisherman. Like, how could you fish for, you know, bass on a fly or whatever it was, you know? And then finally I started doing some traveling with work, and I was like, you know, I don't know why I ever said that, but I just want to try it. I don't know why, but I just want to try it. And I think some of it was that in the back of my mind, I was like, I want to do some saltwater trips sometime. And I know that they've talked about, you know, casting or fishing to carp can be practiced for bonefish and so forth. So I was like, well, maybe I should entertain that. If I'm going to entertain that, well, you might as well entertain any species. Carp are about as bad as they get. So I started on these business trips, just going and bringing a fly rod, and my goal was just to catch whatever was local.
Right.
And that, I think, took me to a different place in my fly fishing career, in all honesty. I broke down all the stereotypes. I actually started learning some different techniques. I had a blast catching different fish. I looked like a goon trying to hold these weird species. I was scared out of my life to touch some of them, but it worked, and I feel like I learned a few things about it. I hooked into a 35-pound king salmon in Traverse City one time. I didn't land it, but he broke off on a 7-weight because I didn't have the right equipment. But it was like, I did it. I know what not to do next time, and you know,
so
things like that. I think you got to go for it. And you can't, you know, just, you know, the purest fly fisherman sort of mentality. You know, it works in some regards, but I think people need to let go of some of that too, and try a few things that are different.
Mm-hmm.
And even if that means a different species or some warm water, if you're normally used to fresh, cold mountain streams and things like that.
Yeah, I fish for smallies a lot in the summer because I'm surrounded by great trout streams and stuff, but it just gets so warm. You know, I try to go for smallies in the summertime, and that's really where I learned how to fish, was for smallmouth bass on a green woolly bugger, and I love it to this day. I prefer that over any other fish. Now I caught some great trout this last spring, and then like like you're saying, you go out and there's like, oh crap, I don't have anything in my box or whatever. Like I always go out real early, too early in the spring to go fly fishing, and I'm like, first part of April into March, I'm like, yeah, I could go for some steelhead, and then my eyes end up freezing up and like, it's just a miserable experience. But for some reason, every year I've got to make myself miserable a couple times, and but I'm learning how to fish, and there's no one else out on the river, which, when the steelhead really start to run, I don't enjoy fishing shoulder to shoulder to a bunch of knuckleheads, So
yeah,
I'm like, if I could just pull one nice steely out today, I'll be okay with that,
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time with us, Adam. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, I would just say, shoot me an email. Best email is adam@scottflyrod.com. It's singular, so adam@scottflyrod.com.
Well, thank you, Adam, and thank you for listening to the Remote No Pressure podcast. Be sure to check out our website at remote-no-pressure.com and check us out on Facebook. Join our mailing list. You know what to do. And until next time, get out and fish.